how many people have experience using exposure rate meters? Have used them before, hands-on?
Exposure to rate.
Used an exposure rate meter. Sorry.
Like field team stuff?
Yeah. Well, something that looks a little bit like this, or a similar looking detector instrument. It's going to give you your rate, because that'll help somewhat, right?
One of those yellow ones I've used that one.
Civil defense meter, or this? Yeah, those are. I mean, seemingly everywhere.
Yeah, we're getting rid of all of ours. Yeah. We can't even give them away. They're like, we don't want them.
Hey, when the accident in Japan happened, people were buying these up on eBay for outrageous amounts of money,
that's why
thinking that they would be helpful for whatever reason.
That's
when
how we're keeping
they wouldn't
some
be.
around right now, so.
Okay.
So
It is good to know.
you're getting
Right? That's money raising cash.
Yeah, that's right. You're getting set up, and the first thing you want to do is inspect your meter, right? So all these will have different components. You want to look at your meter face, analog or digital. You want to inspect for cracks, damage, anything like that. In the body, you want to look for big dents, anything like that that's going on in here. You actually have this electronics package can come off, right? So you want to make sure that nothing's been damaged, nothing's been dented up.
Okay, it's good.
Okay.
Why double A's and not something bigger? Sorry.
I don't know. A lot of instruments run just on double A's, or a lot of them are like C and D cells sometimes, right? That you see in there.
And he said something I didn't understand. He said these are more likely to survive longer on the double A's than those on the C or D cells, which are larger and have more chemical activity to produce the electricity.
Well, I don't know exactly how the battery life works on all these. I know some of them. I don't know if this one works like this or not. But some of these will actually have, with the double A's, you have two banks, and it'll power it for a little while, and once it's done, the other one will kick in. So you actually have two sources of power that you can use. Now, I don't know about this meter, but we've got some ion chambers that do that. They'll have different battery sources, and so if you use up one in the field, the other one will kick in. So maybe it has something to do with that. I haven't done enough working with the meters and measuring their battery times to know. I can tell you that if you've got a radioisotope identifier, those will eat up your batteries in a hurry. So always make sure you've got spares around, because you identify one or two things and then you need to change them out.
Well, I think those ones I used were all charging too.
Yeah, so most of the RIDs will have either a rechargeable battery or an adapter you can get that's got the double A's. So if you don't have enough of your rechargeables, you can switch out to double A's, right? So that's going to be the first thing, physical inspections. You got your cords here, and these kind of work differently to a lot of things. They don't just plug in, they don't just screw on, they kind of go on and then a quarter turn, and that's how you lock them. So you would put it on, this little quarter turn, we'll get it locked into place, and then a quarter turn clockwise, and then counterclockwise, we'll release it. So you want to look at that, make sure that these aren't dented. There's a little pin in the middle, you want to make sure that's not cracked or missing or anything like that, right? So that when you're putting it on, you've got a good connection. Once you've kind of done all your inspections, find your cal sticker. This one is out of calibration, so you wouldn't use it. It was due on 12/30 of 2021. This calibration sticker, some of them won't have as much information. You can see this one. This just has, it was calibrated to the 1, 10, and 100 scale, and a signature and a date. This one actually has what it was calibrated with, which is cesium. Might have even been this source right here on the side of it. And then it has your min and your max responses. It does that for both the channels. It does it for both counts and your exposure rate. So this has a lot of information on it as far as the response that you should have. Typically, when you have a meter that's calibrated, you're going to calibrate this electronics package to these two exact meters, and you're going to keep them all together. You wouldn't want to have your electronics calibrated to a different probe than what you're using on here, because you're not going to be able to trust your response. It's not going to be as accurate that way. So you want to make sure that, typically if you're responding to a CRC, who's ever taking care of the instruments will make sure that your probe is properly paired with your electronics package. But say you notice a dent on here, you wouldn't necessarily keep this probe and get a new electronics package, you'd swap out the whole thing, right? So you want a probe calibrated with your specific electronics. Also, it's important maybe not necessarily for CRC, but you want it calibrated to whatever nuclide you're looking for. Now, at a CRC, there might be a lot of different nuclides present. So this one's calibrated to cesium. Chances are if you're responding to a power plant accident or an IND, there's going to be cesiums around. So that would be good to pick up on it. If there's like a dirty bomb and the only thing that was spread around was like cobalt or something, you probably want to get a meter that can pick up cobalt or is responsive to the energy signature of cobalt. Without getting too much into the weeds, every nuclide has its own energy signature it puts off, so you can identify them. But that's also how you can determine what the most efficient detector is to find that specific nuclide. If you have a very high energy nuclide, but your detector's made more for low energy stuff, it's not going to be very appropriate. Now, again, CRC purposes, that determination will be made for the people, you know, the volunteers doing the work, right? So they won't be in charge of like, whoa, what was my nuclide and all that stuff. Someone will have made those decisions for them and give them the proper meters to use. Now, once you've done all that, in cal, no damage, looks good, we can turn it on. This one's neat because it's got those two different probes on it. So you can kind of see rate meter 1, rate meter 2, you got probe 1 and probe 2, and it can even do counts. So it's a pretty versatile meter. We just got it on rate meter 1, so we want to make sure we're using that one, and we would check it against our source. Now, it has the response on the side there. It's not in cal, but you would check it to the source and make sure it's responding within the minimum and the maximum listed on that sheet. Sometimes, like how we do it in Kansas when we're setting up, we'll have a little card with your check source right on there, and then it'll actually have a mock-up of your meter face, and it will be shaded in where it should respond. And that makes it really easy. You just stick your thing on there and look at your meter face and look at the card, and if it's in the shaded in area, you're good to go. And you take, after you're done with that, you take your background. Now, typically, doing the exposure rates, this wouldn't necessarily be as much of a concern, but if you're like screening for contamination, right, what I like to do is tape my background measure right there. So get a piece of masking tape, stick it somewhere where it's not interfering with what you can see, and write your background level on there. And that way you can just look at it, you know, as you're going through. You don't have to remember what that background is all the time because it's written right on your meter. All right, so we've gone through setup and everything. All these work a little bit differently, but who wants to play around with them?
Yeah.
Because that's really the funnest part. So you feel free to come in here and turn on all these other meters here. We've got this depleted uranium here, so that gives off a nice healthy field. You know, if you want to watch these, like this thing will scale up. Oh wait. Take this guy here and look at the face. It says micro and then R per hour. And once you start getting that, goes up in a hurry. Now it says MR per hour. So it'll automatically scale up. And a lot of these will alarm. That little guy will alarm as well. This will alarm. There are ways to silence that. So, you know, just mess around with them. It starts alarming, back it out. This one has a little switch here that will zero out that alarm. This one also has a little button that'll do the same thing. Another thing to look for are these windows. So when expecting damage, this is what he's talking about with those thin windows. Very fragile on the end of that. So you don't want to be knocking that around or anything. You want to make sure that it is not punctured at all, because that will affect how it detects any light that can get in there, basically. This actually goes on this other guy. That's why they have these caps to protect them. All right, so feel free to get in there.